The hiss of salmon skin crisping in the pan was the only sound in the kitchen, a comforting, domestic rhythm that I had come to associate with peace. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind of unremarkable day that makes up the bulk of a life, and I was determined to make it special. I adjusted the ridiculous apron Ilara had bought me for our 4th anniversary, the one with Danger Man Cooking printed in bold, silly letters. It was a joke gift, but I wore it with a kind of foolish pride. My name is Caleb Vance, and at 34, I believed I had successfully navigated the treacherous waters of adulthood. I had a respectable job as a senior project manager at an architecture firm in Denver, a house in a quiet suburb with a lawn I meticulously manicured every Saturday, and a 7-year marriage to a woman I still thought hung the moon, Ilara. Her name itself felt like poetry on my tongue. Lately, though, the poetry had been harder to find. There was a distance in her eyes, a new and constant companionship with the blue light of her phone screen. She was working late more often, her texts becoming clipped and perfunctory. I'd chalked it up to stress. Her marketing firm had just landed a massive new client, and she was leading the campaign. I told myself this was the ebb and flow of a long-term partnership. You weather the storms, you provide a safe harbor, and you wait for the tide to turn. Tonight was my attempt to turn the tide. I'd stopped at the florist on my way home, picking up a bouquet of white irises, her favorite. They now stood in a crystal vase on the dining room table, their delicate petals unfurling beside the good china we rarely used. I'd decanted a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, the expensive one we'd been saving. The table was set for two, bathed in the soft, flickering glow of candlelight. Everything was perfect. This, I thought, was how you fight for something you love. You don't let the silence win. You fill it with the sizzle of pan-seared salmon and the scent of lemon butter sauce. My heart gave a familiar, pathetic little leap when I heard her car pull into the driveway. 7 years, and the sound of her coming home still felt like an event. I wiped my hands on my apron, took a deep breath, and tried to look as effortlessly charming as possible, leaning against the kitchen counter. The front door clicked open, followed by the sharp, rhythmic tap of heels against the hardwood floor, a sound that usually meant she was in a hurry. "Caleb, I'm home," she called out. Her voice was strained, distracted. It wasn't the warm, unwinding sigh of someone happy to be back in their sanctuary. It was the clipped announcement of an intruder in their own life. "In the kitchen, babe," I called back, my voice laced with a cheerfulness I suddenly had to feign. She walked in, and for a moment, the air left my lungs. She was stunning. She wore a form-fitting black dress I'd never seen before, elegant and severe, the kind of dress that makes a statement before its wearer even speaks. Her auburn hair, usually pulled back in a simple professional knot, was styled in soft, voluminous waves. Her makeup was immaculate, far too elaborate for a Tuesday at the office. She looked like she was going to a gala, not coming home from one. "Wow," I managed, a foolish grin spreading across my face. "You look incredible. What's the occasion?" She barely glanced at me, her thumb swiping furiously across her phone screen. "Oh, this old thing. Just felt like dressing up today." My grin faltered. I gestured with a flourish toward the dining room, a desperate showman trying to win over a hostile audience. "Well, perfect timing. I made your favorite, pan-seared salmon with a lemon butter caper sauce, roasted asparagus. The works." I pointed toward the irises. "Even got those flowers you love." Ilara finally looked up from her phone. For a fleeting second, I saw something in her eyes, an emotion I couldn't quite place. It wasn't guilt, not exactly. It was more like annoyance, impatience, like I was a roadblock on a highway she was speeding down. She walked past me into the dining room, her heels clicking a funereal rhythm. I followed behind, a hopeful puppy trailing its indifferent master. She stopped at the head of the table, her gaze sweeping over the scene I had so carefully constructed: the candles, the flowers, the perfectly arranged place settings. "Oh," she said, her voice utterly flat, devoid of any emotion. "This is cute." Cute. Not beautiful, not romantic, not thoughtful. Cute. The word landed with a thud in the pit of my stomach. It was the word you used for a child's crayon drawing, a kitten video, a clumsy but well-intentioned gesture. It was a dismissal. I forced the feeling down. "I thought we could have a nice evening together," I said, pulling out her chair like I'd seen in the movies. "We haven't really connected in weeks. I miss you." She checked her phone again, her fingers a blur of motion as she typed out a response. My heart, which had been hopefully fluttering, sank like a stone. "What do you mean you can't stay? It's Tuesday night. We don't have any plans. Um, she finally put her phone down on the table, the screen still glowing. A third party in our conversation. She looked at me then, really looked at me, but the warmth I knew, the spark that used to make my world tilt on its axis, was gone. Her eyes were like polished stones. I'm going out. Going out? Where? The questions were tumbling out of me now, laced with a confusion that was rapidly souring into dread. Just out, with some friends from work. We're celebrating the new campaign launch. The excuse was flimsy, and we both knew it. Alara was not a casual drinks with friends person. She was a homebody who cherished her quiet evenings. And she would never, ever wear a dress like that for a simple work gathering. My gaze drifted from her dress to her face, searching for a tell, a flicker of the woman I married. On a Tuesday night, I pressed, my voice sounding weaker than I wanted. And you're wearing that dress to grab drinks with coworkers? A muscle in her jaw tightened. What's wrong with this dress? Nothing's wrong with it. It's a lot for work drinks. I felt like I was walking through a minefield, every step triggering a new small explosion of her irritation. She picked up her purse from the counter, a sleek leather clutch that matched her shoes. Well, I like to look nice. Is that a crime now? Of course not. I thought we could. Caleb. She cut me off, her tone sharp, final. It was a tone I'd never heard her use with me before. The dinner looks cute, okay? Really cute, but I'm going out. We'll do this another time. There it was again. Cute. And the way she'd said, another time felt like a lie. It was a promise made of smoke, meant to dissipate the moment it left her lips. A chill snaked down my spine. Her phone buzzed on the table, a sharp, insistent vibration. She glanced at it, and her entire face transformed. A genuine, radiant smile spread across her lips. Her eyes lit up, and a faint blush colored her cheeks. It was the look she used to give me years ago when I'd surprise her or say something that made her laugh. It was a look I hadn't seen directed at me in months, maybe years. Actually, she said, her fingers flying across the screen in a rapid reply. I should probably head out now. Traffic, you know. But I did know. I knew her tells. I'd spent 7 years cataloging them. She only got that specific glow when she was truly, deeply excited about something. She only bit her lower lip that way when she was nervous in a good way. The way she used to look at me across a crowded room. The question escaped my lips before I could stop it. A desperate, last-ditch effort to hold on to the world that was crumbling around me. Who are you texting? Her head snapped up, and for a split second, I saw it. Panic. Pure, undiluted panic flashed across her face before being replaced by a mask of indignation. What? Your phone, I said, my voice dangerously steady. You haven't put it down since you walked in the door, and whoever just texted you made you smile more than I have in weeks. So, I'm asking again, who is it? Her cheeks flushed a deep, angry red. Excuse me? Are you monitoring my phone now, Caleb? I'm not monitoring anything, Alara. I'm just observing that my wife seems infinitely more excited about a text message than she does about the husband who spent 2 hours making her favorite meal. The accusation hung in the air between us, heavy and toxic. The candles flickered, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. The silence stretched, filled only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, each tick marking a second of my life falling apart. Part of me, the foolish, hopeful part, prayed she would break. That she would sit down, cry, and tell me what was wrong. That we could fix this. But the other part of me, the part that had been seeing the small signs for weeks, knew better. She took a deep breath, her shoulders squaring, as if preparing for battle. Look, she said, her voice losing its anger and taking on a chillingly calm tone. I appreciate the dinner, I really do. But I made plans, and I'm not going to cancel them. I'm your husband, Ilira. We live in this house together. I shouldn't have to book an appointment to have dinner with my own wife. Our house, she corrected quietly, and the way she said it, with a subtle emphasis on the past tense, made my blood run cold. She was already mentally dividing the assets. She grabbed her keys, avoiding my gaze. I'll be back later. How much later? I don't know, Caleb. Later. She was halfway to the door. I had one last chance. Alara, wait. She stopped, her back to me. Is there something you want to tell me? The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I could smell the salmon growing cold. I could feel my own heart hammering against my ribs. A frantic, trapped bird. Finally, she turned, The look on her face was one of complete detachment. She was looking at a stranger. "The dinner was cute, Caleb," she said, her voice as flat and cold as a marble slab. "Really cute, but I have to go now. My boyfriend is waiting." Boyfriend. The word didn't just hang in the air, it detonated. It obliterated the room, the house, the 7 years of my life. It echoed in the ringing silence that followed, replaying in my mind. My boyfriend, my boyfriend, my boyfriend. I stood there, a statue in a ridiculous apron, rooted to the spot in the wreckage of my own kitchen. I watched her turn and walk out the door without another word, without a backward glance. The door clicked shut, a sound of absolute finality. I listened to the engine of her car start, the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway, and then the fading sound as her taillights disappeared down the street, red embers of a life that was now extinguished. The silence she left behind was profound. It was a physical presence, pressing in on me, suffocating me. For how long I stood there, I don't know. Minutes? An hour? Time had lost its meaning. My world had been uncreated in the span of 5 seconds. Slowly, I untied the apron strings. The silly printed words seemed to mock me now. Danger. Man cooking. The real danger had walked in wearing a black dress and carrying a designer clutch. My first instinct was to shatter something, to sweep the plates off the table, to hurl the wine bottle against the wall, to scream until my lungs burned. But I did none of those things. An eerie calm settled over me, cold and heavy as a shroud. I walked into the dining room. The candles were still burning, their flames dancing as if nothing had happened. The white irises drooped slightly, as if in mourning. The 2 plates of salmon sat there, perfectly cooked, now cold and congealed. A romantic dinner for 2, now a sad tableau for 1. Too bad to let it all go to waste, a voice in my head said, a voice that sounded unnervingly detached. I pulled out my chair, the one opposite the empty seat she had rejected, and sat down. I picked up my fork and knife and began to eat. The salmon was flaky, the sauce was tangy, the asparagus was tender. It was delicious. I ate every last bite, methodically, deliberately. Then I poured myself a glass of the expensive Cabernet. It was rich and complex on my tongue. I drank it slowly, savoring the bitter aftertaste. As I sat there, alone at the head of my dining room table, the pain began to recede, replaced by something else. It started as a low ember in the pit of my stomach and slowly grew into a roaring, all-consuming fire. It wasn't just grief. It wasn't just anger. It was fury. A cold, quiet, razor-sharp fury. She thought she could do this. She thought she could humiliate me, betray me, lie to me for months, and then just waltz out the door to her new life while I cleaned up the mess. She thought she could dismiss 7 years of marriage with the word cute. She had looked at me not as a husband she had wronged, but as an inconvenience she had finally overcome. In her arrogance, she had made a critical miscalculation. She had seen my love, my loyalty, my willingness to fight for us, and she had mistaken it for weakness. She assumed Caleb Vance was a pushover, a man who would crumble and mourn quietly. She was wrong. I finished my wine, blew out the candles one by one, and walked upstairs to our bedroom, my bedroom now. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. The house was silent, but my mind was screaming. The grief was still there, a massive, gaping wound in my chest. But now, it had a purpose. It was fuel. Alara wanted to start a new life. Fine. But I was going to be the architect of its ruin. The quiet man in the silly apron was gone. In his place was someone she had never met, someone she had created with her own betrayal, and he was just getting started. The first few days were a blur of hollow routine. I went to work. I smiled at my colleagues. I managed projects and answered emails. But beneath the surface of normalcy, a different kind of project was taking shape, one I pursued with a chilling, obsessive focus in the dead of night. My grief had crystallized into a single, driving purpose, to uncover the full scope of her betrayal. Revenge was a dish, best served cold, and I was determined to prepare a feast. I started with the finances. It was the easiest, most logical place to begin. For hours, I sat hunched over my laptop, the screen's glow casting a pale, ghostly light on my face as I sifted through 3 months of our joint credit card and bank statements. The digital breadcrumbs were everywhere. There were dinners for 2 at trendy downtown restaurants I'd never even heard of. Charges from Victoria's Secret for lingerie I had never seen. A weekend trip to a boutique hotel in Aspen 2 months ago, The same weekend she'd told me she was at a mandatory marketing conference in Boulder. The hotel bill was damning. One king bed, champagne service to the room. Our money. The money I worked 60 hours a week to earn, funding her romantic getaways with another man. Each transaction was a small, sharp betrayal. She had been dressing herself up for him, dining with him, and vacationing with him on my dime. The paper trail was damning, but it was circumstantial. I needed something more. I needed their words. I needed their voices. And then I remembered. About 6 months ago, Alara had complained about her new work laptop not syncing properly with her phone. She'd asked me to add it to our family iCloud account so she could easily access photos and documents from home. I, the ever-helpful husband, had set it up for her in under 10 minutes. And in my typical, methodical fashion, I had enabled the full backup feature. Everything on her laptop, every photo, every document, every email, every iMessage was being automatically silently duplicated to our shared cloud storage. She had, in her carelessness, handed me the keys to her secret life. My hands trembled slightly as I navigated to the iCloud login page. I typed in the password, one we had created together on our honeymoon, Santorini Sunrise 07. The irony was a bitter pill. It took less than 5 minutes to access the backup files. What I found there was a cataclysm. It wasn't 3 months, it was 4. She had lied even about the length of her betrayal, a small, pathetic attempt to soften a blow that was already fatal. The first messages were from a man named Griffin. They started innocently enough flirtatious compliments about a work presentation, inside jokes about their boss. But the progression from professional to personal was dizzyingly fast. Within 2 weeks, they were texting from morning until night. He told her she was brilliant and beautiful, wasted on a boring suburban life. She confessed that she hadn't felt this seen in years. She complained about me, painting me as a dull, predictable husband who cared more about his lawn than her soul. She was feeding him a narrative where she was the victim, and he was her gallant rescuer. By month 2, the messages had become explicitly sexual. They were graphic, detailed, and utterly devastating. They described encounters in hotel rooms, in the backseat of his car, even once in her office after hours. He had a nickname for her. She had a nickname for him. They had built an entire world, a secret, sordid universe that existed in parallel to mine. They compared his performance in bed to mine, with me coming out as the clear loser. Young Griffin apparently had a stamina her boring old husband lacked. I felt physically ill. I had to get up and splash cold water on my face, my reflection in the bathroom mirror showing a pale, hollowed-out stranger. But I forced myself to go back. I had to see it all. The most recent messages were the worst. They were planning their future. They discussed how she should break the news to me, how to best handle the divorce to get the most out of it. Griffin encouraged her to move quickly, suggesting they look at apartments together, even joking about what they would name their future children. They were building their life on the ashes of mine before I even knew there was a fire. But the message that finally shattered the last vestiges of my grief and forged it into pure, unadulterated steel was one she had sent to Griffin the morning after our disastrous final dinner. Alara, you won't believe what Caleb did last night. A full-on candlelight dinner. Salmon, flowers, the works. It was so pathetically romantic. He looked so desperate and clueless. I almost felt sorry for him, but then I remembered that I was finally going to be free. Free to be with you. Pathetically romantic. She had taken my final, desperate act of love and twisted it into a joke to share with her lover. She had mocked me, ridiculed my heart, and called me pathetic. That was it. That was the moment the husband died, and the executioner was born. I meticulously screenshotted every message. I downloaded every email. I saved every hotel receipt and credit card statement. Alara had underestimated me. She and Griffin had been sloppy, arrogant in their secrecy. They had left a digital trail a mile wide, and I was going to use it to burn their world to the ground. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, a beautiful day for a demolition. Alara sent me a text around 10 a.m., a message dripping with false consideration. Alara, I need to come by this afternoon to get more of my things. Could you make sure you're not there around 2? It would just be easier. Easier for her, she meant. She didn't want to face the man whose life she had just detonated. Caleb, no problem. I have errands to run. The house will be empty. My first errand was to a print shop. The air inside smelled of toner and industrial paper. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, I felt a strange sense of calm, the focused serenity of a general before a battle. I printed everything. The stack of paper was nearly 2 inches thick, a tangible testament to her lies. I organized it all chronologically, using different colored highlighters to mark the most damning passages. The financial infidelity, the sexual encounters on company time, the plans for the divorce. I made multiple copies. One set was for my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense man named Marcus Thorne, who I knew would relish a case with such clear-cut evidence. Another set went into a safe deposit box at my bank. But the most important copies were destined for a wider audience. My first target was their careers. Henderson and Associates Marketing prided itself on its family-friendly, professional image. I knew from Alara that they had a zero-tolerance policy regarding relationships between senior employees and their subordinates. Alara was a senior manager. Griffin was an account executive who reported directly to her team lead, placing him firmly under her in the corporate hierarchy. Their affair wasn't just adultery. It was a flagrant violation of corporate policy. I crafted a carefully worded, impeccably professional email addressed to the head of human resources, CCing the company's CEO and all managing partners. The subject line was simple: formal complaint regarding code of conduct violation, Alara Vance and Griffin Hayes. In the body of the email, I laid out the facts dispassionately, citing dates and times. I attached a password-protected PDF. The password was iIntegrity. Inside the file was a curated selection of their text messages, specifically the ones discussing their sexual encounters in the office, their plans to meet during work hours, and Alara's complaints about being too distracted by Griffin to focus on her projects. I also included the credit card statements showing company funds being used for their personal dinners under the guise of client entertainment. My next targets were their families. Alara had always been the golden child, the perfect daughter her parents doted on. They adored me too, always saying how lucky she was to have found such a stable, loving husband. They were about to learn who their daughter really was. I composed another email, this one more personal, to her parents and her 2 siblings. I didn't include the explicit messages, I had some decency left, but I provided a clear, factual timeline of the affair, supported by the evidence of her financial deception. Griffin wasn't spared. A little social media sleuthing revealed that his father was a prominent and deeply religious businessman in Colorado Springs. I sent a similar package to him, outlining how his son was actively pursuing a married woman and encouraging her to dissolve her marriage. I even found Griffin's recent ex-girlfriend, a woman whose social media posts hinted at a bitter breakup. I sent her an anonymous message with a few key screenshots. I had a feeling she would know what to do with them. But the masterpiece, the real coup de grace, was reserved for their social circles. In her carelessness, Alara had left her saved passwords for her social media accounts accessible through the iCloud keychain. And Griffin, in his infatuated trust, had shared his Instagram password with her. I had access to everything. I logged into Alara's Facebook account, a carefully curated gallery of a perfect life, filled with over 1,000 friends, family members, colleagues, and acquaintances. Her last post with me was from 3 weeks ago, a smiling photo from a hike, with a caption about finding peace in nature. It was a lie. I began to type. At precisely 2 p.m. on Saturday, just as I knew Alara would be arriving at the house, I launched my attack. I parked my truck down the street, close enough to see her car pull into our driveway, but far enough away to be unnoticed. I watched as she got out, already on her phone, her face a mask of stress. She was likely already fielding confused calls from family members who had received my morning emails. She had no idea the real storm was about to break. From my own phone, I hit post on her Facebook page. The post I had crafted was a work of art, written in her voice, imbued with a tone of tearful, heartfelt confession. To all my friends and family, I have something I need to confess. And there is no easy way to say this. For the past 4 months, I have been living a lie. I have been engaged in an affair with a colleague, Griffin Hayes, and in doing so, I have betrayed my husband, Caleb, in the most profound way imaginable. I lied to him, I used our shared finances to fund this affair, and I have broken the heart of a man who deserved nothing but my loyalty. I am not making excuses. My actions were selfish and inexcusable. I am deeply sorry for the pain I have caused everyone who loved and trusted me. This is the truth, and I have to own it. I did the same on Griffin's Instagram account, which was a shrine to his own vanity gym selfies, expensive meals, and scenic trips. I chose a recent photo of him smiling confidently and replaced the caption with a lengthy, detailed confession about his role in pursuing a married woman and destroying her marriage. I tagged Ilara in the post. I tagged their company. I tagged the trendy restaurants where they had their secret dates. Then, I sat back and watched the world burn. The reaction was instantaneous and brutal. Within minutes, comments began flooding in. Shock, disgust, anger. Ilara's sister commented, "Is this a joke? Ilara, call me right now." Her mother posted a single, heartbreaking question. Why? Friends who had attended our wedding expressed their disbelief and disappointment. On Griffin's post, his fraternity brothers began roasting him. His ex-girlfriend, Sarah, shared the post with the caption, "Told you all he was a snake. Some things never change." Even his own father commented, "You have brought shame upon this family, Griffin. We will be speaking." As reason, I gave her 15 minutes inside the house. 15 minutes to see the notifications, to feel the digital walls of her life caving in. Then, I called the house landline. She snatched it up on the first ring, her voice a panicked sob. "Caleb? Thank God. Someone hacked my Facebook, my accounts. They're posting horrible things." "No one hacked your account, Ilara," I said, my voice as calm and steady as a frozen lake. There was a pause, a stunned silence. What do you mean?" "I mean, I posted all of it," I explained patiently, as if talking to a child. "Every word about your affair with Griffin, every lie you told, every dollar you spent, I made sure that everyone you have ever known sees you for exactly who you are." "You can't do that. That's illegal," she shrieked. "Actually, it's not. You gave me access to your accounts, remember? And everything I posted was the truth. Libel requires falsehood, Ilara. There are no falsehoods here." I could hear her ragged, desperate breathing on the other end of the line. "Caleb, you don't understand. This is going to ruin me. My job, my family." "Your job is already gone," I informed her coolly. "I sent a comprehensive file on your little office romance to HR this morning. I'm quite certain that sleeping with a subordinate and expensing your dates violates several clauses in your employment contract." A strangled gasp. "You sent what? To HR?" "Everything, Ilara. Now they know. Your parents know. Griffin's parents know. All our friends know. There is no corner of your life left untouched." "Please," she begged, her voice breaking completely. "You're destroying my life." "No," I corrected her, my voice hard as granite. "You destroyed your life when you chose to cheat on me. You destroyed it when you lied for 4 months. You destroyed it when you stood in our kitchen and told me our marriage was cute before leaving to meet your boyfriend. I am simply holding up a mirror to the choices you made." She was openly weeping now, ugly, gasping sobs. "But Griffin, he didn't do anything wrong. He's not married. He doesn't deserve this. He pursued a married woman. He deserves everything he gets." "Caleb, please, I'm begging you. Take the post down. I'll do anything." "Anything." The word hung there, a final, desperate gambit. "Anything?" I asked. "Really?" "Yes, anything." I let the silence stretch for a moment, letting her hang on that desperate thread of hope. "Okay," I said finally. "I want you to come home. End it with Griffin, right now. Quit your job. We'll go to counseling. And you will sign a post-nuptial agreement stating that if you ever betray me again, you walk away with nothing but the clothes on your back." "Oh?" The silence on the other end was long and heavy. I could hear the internal calculation, the weighing of options. Finally, she whispered, "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because I don't love you anymore, Caleb," she sobbed. "I love him." It was the last nail in the coffin. Even with her world on fire, she chose him. "Then I guess you'll have to live with the consequences," I said, and hung up the phone. The fallout was, as I had anticipated, spectacular. On Monday morning, both Ilara and Griffin were called into separate meetings at Henderson and Associates and summarily fired, escorted out of the building with their belongings in cardboard boxes. The company's zero-tolerance policy was not just for show. Ilara's family effectively disowned her. Her parents, mortified and heartbroken, stopped taking her calls. Her sister sent her a single, blistering text message calling her a disgrace. The social shunning was absolute. She and Griffin tried to weather the storm together, but their relationship, born in the thrill of secrecy and deception, couldn't survive the harsh light of reality. Love, it turned out, doesn't pay the rent when you're both unemployed and ostracized. They broke up within 3 months. The divorce was swift and brutal for her. Armed with irrefutable evidence of adultery and financial infidelity, my lawyer, Marcus, dismantled her case. She received no alimony, no claim to my retirement accounts, and no share of the house's equity. She walked away with her car, her personal belongings, and the consequences of her choices. The last I heard, Alara had moved to a small town a few hours away, working as a receptionist. Griffin had moved back in with his parents in Colorado Springs. His promising career in marketing reduced to a job at his uncle's insurance agency. As for me, I sold the house. It held too many ghosts. I bought a modern condo downtown, a place that was entirely my own, filled with new furniture and no memories. I threw myself into my work, into my health, into rebuilding. The first year was hard. There were nights when the silence was deafening, when the ghost of the life I thought I'd had would creep into my thoughts. But with time, the sharp edges of the pain began to dull. About a year after the divorce was finalized, I met someone. Her name was Anna. She was a landscape architect with a quick laugh and kind eyes. We met through a mutual friend, and our first date was simple coffee on a Saturday morning. She didn't think romantic gestures were cute. She thought they were heartfelt. She didn't see loyalty as an obligation, but as a precious gift. With her, I learned to trust again. I learned that what I had with Alara hadn't been a great love, destroyed by an affair, but a flawed foundation that was destined to crumble. 6 months ago, a letter arrived at my condo. I recognized Alara's elegant, looping handwriting immediately. It was a long, rambling apology, filled with regrets and self-pity. She wrote that what she'd had with Griffin was a fleeting infatuation, a terrible mistake. She said she missed the stability, the security, the man I had been. She asked if there was any chance for us to reconcile. I read the letter once, from start to finish. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, not even a flicker of the love I once had for her. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry for how it had all turned out for her. I folded the letter neatly, walked it to the kitchen, and dropped it into the trash. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some mistakes don't get a second chance. Alara thought she could control the narrative, that she could discard me and move on without consequence. She was wrong. She once told me my dinner was cute. She was right. But my revenge was a masterpiece. And my new life, the one I built from the ashes of the old, was truly beautiful.